Now, according to the 2017 Old Mutual Savings and Investment Monitor, 50% of metropolitan working mothers consider themselves to be single mothers, and only 16% say that they receive regular financial support from the father of their children. This places a huge responsibility on mothers as the sole breadwinners to ensure their families will be protected if something unexpected happens to them. This is also a major financial burden on single mothers and a cause of concern should anything go wrong with your health and your personal well-being. So to speak to us about how single mothers should protect themselves financially, I'm joined by Priya Naicker, who is an advice manager at Old Mutual Personal Finance, and of course she's in our Sea Point studios this morning. Priya, thank you for joining us and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for having me.
How did Old Mutual come up with these findings on single mothers? How did the I imagine a survey or something like that work?
So I think the first thing that's really important is to acknowledge that there is a problem and to be able to share the information at the relevant platforms and let people know that the problem is real, that it doesn't just affect single mothers, but the number of dependents that are attached to those mothers. And if you look at the fact that most of these single moms don't just take care of their immediate families, but are also providers for their extended families, then we see that it becomes a societal problem. And it's not just a problem that the single moms or single parents face on their own. So really awareness and getting people to understand that this is a real problem and that we need to band together as society to take care of this is the first step.
How big or bad is the situation in South Africa? I mean, we're saying in your survey, 50% of metropolitan working mothers consider themselves to be single mothers and only 16% receive regular financial aid. But this is, you're talking metropolitan here. I mean, if we go wider, this is, I imagine these figures are quite small in comparison to what the picture really looks like.
Absolutely. So as you say, it's metropolitan mothers only. So the problem is much wider. In fact, recently we had some statistics that the UN says that fatherlessness in our time is going to be one of the biggest problems in our society. So we see that it's not just an issue for us locally in South Africa, but it's also a broader global issue that we need to tackle. So it's certainly a huge problem. And if you look at the risks that are associated with the single parent, specifically mothers, the protection aspect and how vulnerable they are to critical illnesses, to accidents, to anything that could compromise their ability to provide for their families, it becomes a real critical and dire need for us to address.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are social grants for single mothers, but this is by no means going to get you through. You know, when you have to clothe, house, shelter, educate, nurture a child, just living off of a child grant is not going to do it. So, I mean, how do we look towards saving for our children and trying to, I suppose, look after both their interests and the single mother's interests?
So the first thing to acknowledge is that this is a concern for all of us. We are all vulnerable to the risks that a single parent faces. It just becomes far more critical in terms of the risk associated with single parents. It is important to acknowledge that there is a problem, as we said earlier, but there are also solutions. There are solutions that are right for the single parent and specifically tailored solutions for the mom. For single mothers and for those that are looking after extended families as well. So it's important to partner with the right people to seek the help that you need, to pull a financial planner into your environment and to take the time that's necessary to plan for these events. There are protection elements that can be used as solutions and very important to have things like critical illness cover so that when your income is compromised through a severe illness, you don't have to compromise the quality of life that your dependents experience as well.
Yeah. So if you had to educate people, I mean, I think you've given a little bit of advice, but what financial support or safety nets should single mothers put in place?
I think the most important thing is to take the time to plan your finances. And it sounds really simple, but it's amazing how few of us actually do that. And certainly, as we said, for a single parent, it becomes even more critical. So plan your finances, create a budget, and then put the right protection pieces in place. So even before you start investing in terms of children's education and long-term savings, the most important thing is to protect what you already have. And this ability to create income to generate a lifestyle for your family is the first step. It's the biggest asset that you have. So protect that and then start looking at savings. When you create a budget, it's quite easy to find money that you didn't know you had, and to be able to find the right means to invest long term.
Yeah, and obviously there's the saving for a school policy to get children to the best schools. What is available for that when we talk about saving for this education, which is vital to children?
Yes, it is vital. And in the Savings and Investment Monitor recently that Old Mutual put out, we saw that there was a decline in savings for education, specifically in the lower income market. And that's a concern, especially against the backdrop like fees must fall that we've experienced. So it's critical that saving is put in place. What's good to know is that there are not just fixed savings and committed plans in place, but you can also have flexible savings where you can save when you want, how you want, stop during times of financial crisis, and then start up again. It's just important to take some action towards it and to stay disciplined, and that's where a financial planner can help keep you accountable and coach you through the journey as well.
Yeah, and also to try not dig into that fund when times are looking quite bad, because that's generally what you find people start doing, is that as soon as your financial woes start to hit you, you start digging into these little savings pockets that you have, and then suddenly it's all gone and you have nothing left. The other thing, obviously we're talking about single moms, but there are a lot of single dads out there that are doing their best to support their children, and I imagine the advice is the same.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we really speak in terms of single parent generally. But in this specific example, moms are raised out as being in a particularly unique situation. But you are right, single dads face exactly the same concerns, and the same advice would apply. We are all vulnerable to these aspects. It's just that the single parent is probably in a more dire situation, in that they need to provide for extended family and their dependents, their children.
You know, we often, and I'll leave it on this note, but we often, as women, and maybe I'm generalizing, we sort of leave it to our husbands to decide, about the retirement and the future, and worry about the money and having everything in place. But, advice to women out there that are in a marriage or that are in a relationship, what would you tell them? Because, when it comes to that day when if your partner does pass away or leave you and you're suddenly left with nothing because you thought he had it all under control and you were sorted, what do you advise women to do?
I think the time has long passed when we can afford to leave our finances in the hands of anyone else or defer to somebody else, So whether you're in a long-term committed relationship, in a marriage, there really is an important need for each and every person to plan. You're welcome to plan, or it's perfectly fine to plan together as a joint unit. But you absolutely have to take care of your long-term planning, your retirement, protecting your income and your savings. So just get more involved with the money. What we are seeing, though, is a wonderful trend towards women who previously didn't take hold of their finances, really starting to engage with it and prepare and plan for themselves on their own. So certainly that is an important aspect.
Excellent. Let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you very, very much for talking to us about very vital information when it comes to saving for our children and ourselves as well. That was Priya Naicker, Advice Manager of Personal Finance at Old Mutual. Let's take a break. We're talking the state of South African universities after this. Stay tuned.